The echo from the void. The Galactic Assembly Hall gleamed with the reflected light of 3 artificial suns, its crystalline architecture designed to accommodate the thousands of species that made up the United Galactic Assembly. At the center of the vast chamber, Ambassador Marcus Chen stood alone, his stocky human frame dwarfed by the towering aliens that surrounded him. Unlike the Assembly representatives with their multicolored skin, extra limbs, and evolutionary adaptations to gentle homeworlds, Chen's species had evolved on a planet that most Assembly members considered a death trap. Earth. Classification: Deathworld. A planet of crushing gravity, toxic oxygen concentrations, extreme temperature variations, and aggressive predators. The fact that humans had not only survived but thrived in such conditions made them objects of both fascination and discomfort to the wider galactic community. "The Assembly has reviewed your petition, Ambassador Chen," announced High Counselor HFY, their voice translated through the neural interface all diplomats wore. "We find no compelling evidence that the signal detected at Outpost Sigma 9 represents any threat warranting emergency action." Chen's jaw tightened. "High Counselor, respectfully, the signal patterns match nothing in our combined database. The outpost reported gravitational anomalies before going dark. This is the 3rd border station to disappear in the past solar cycle." The Palaxian representative waved a delicate tendril dismissively. "Border outposts experience equipment failures constantly, especially in the gravitational eddies of the Veil Nebula. Your species' tendency toward alarmism is well documented." A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. Chen recognized the familiar prejudice. Humans, with their evolutionary history of constant vigilance against predators, were often dismissed as paranoid by species evolved in less threatening environments. "Then the Assembly will take no action?" Chen asked, knowing the answer. "We will dispatch a scientific survey team," HFY replied. "In approximately 7 cycles, when resources become available." Chen bowed stiffly. "Thank you for your consideration." As he strode from the chamber, his neural implant chimed with an encrypted message. "Operation Washfire authorized. Pathfinder deployed." Far from the gleaming towers of the Assembly capital, at the edge of explored space, the human scout ship Pathfinder dropped out of FTL, its stealth systems immediately engaging. Captain Nora Hayes stood on the bridge, her tall frame rigid with tension as she studied the holographic display showing their position relative to Outpost Sigma 9. "Status report," she ordered. Lieutenant Raj Kapoor, her operations officer, responded without looking up from his console. "No response to hails, Captain. No power signatures. Outpost appears completely offline. Life signs? None detected, but there's significant interference with our scans. Something in the area is distorting our sensor readings." Hayes nodded. "Tactical. Defense systems prepped, but inactive permission parameters," replied Commander Diana Wu, her fingers hovering over the weapons controls. "We're officially a search and rescue mission." "Officially," Hayes said with a tight smile. "Let's keep our fangs hidden for now." Few outside of human space knew that every human vessel larger than a shuttle carried weapons capable of planetary bombardment. It was Earth's most closely guarded secret, that while playing the role of humble newcomers to the galactic community, they had never stopped preparing for war. "Take us in, Helm. Keep our approach vector between the outpost and that stellar remnant to mask our heat signature." The Pathfinder glided silently toward the abandoned station, a sleek predator in the void. Through the view screen, Hayes could see the outpost, a standard assembly design, a hexagonal station with extending research pods. It appeared intact. "That's strange," Kapoor said. "No signs of structural damage. It's as if everyone simply vanished." "Prepare an away team," Hayes ordered. "Full environmental suits with independent life support." "I want." "Captain." The sensor officer's voice cracked with urgency. "Gravitational distortion forming off our starboard bow." The view screen shifted to show what appeared to be a ripple in the fabric of space itself, a darkness deeper than the void between stars. "Full power to engines," Hayes commanded. "Get us clear of that anomaly." The ship lurched as its engines strained against a sudden gravitational pull. Warning alarms blared across the bridge. "It's not natural," Kapoor shouted over the noise. "The distortion pattern is symmetrical, artificially generated." Hayes watched in horror as tendrils of darkness extended from the anomaly, reaching toward them like hungry fingers. Shields up, weapons systems online. The protocol violation would mean her court-martial if they survived, but Hayes knew that understanding the threat now took precedence over maintaining humanity's facade of limited military capability. "Targeting systems online," Wu confirmed, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Reading multiple targets, but I can't get a lock. They're shifting, as if they exist partially outside our dimensional plane." The violent impact rocked the ship. Status displays flashed red across the bridge. "Hull breach on Deck C," reported the damage control officer, sealing emergency bulkheads. "Show me," Hayes demanded. The display shifted to internal security footage. Hayes felt her blood run cold. The darkness wasn't simply damaging the ship, it was consuming it. Where the hull had been breached, the metal wasn't torn or melted. It simply ceased to exist where the darkness touched it, the edge between existence and nothingness advancing steadily inward. "We need to warn Earth," Hayes said, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her chest. "This is what happened to the outposts. Some kind of entropy weapon." "Communications are being jammed," Kapoor reported. "Standard channels are all blocked." Lieutenant Commander Gabriel Santos, the ship's engineer, looked up from his station. "Captain, I might be able to modify our quantum entanglement communicator to punch through on an old Earth military frequency. The assembly doesn't monitor those bands." "Do it," Hayes ordered. "Everyone else, prepare for emergency evacuation. Set the reactor for overload. We need to buy Santos time." As the crew rushed to comply, Hayes watched the darkness spreading through her ship. Whatever this entity was, it consumed energy and matter alike, growing stronger with each bite it took out of reality. And the assembly, in their complacency, had dismissed it as a sensor malfunction. In the engine room, Santos worked frantically to modify the communications array, sweat beading on his dark skin despite the environmental controls. The ship shuddered continuously now as the darkness consumed more of its structure. "Santos to bridge," he called over the comm. "I've got the QEC reconfigured. One-time burst transmission only. We'll burn out the entire array." "Make it count," Hayes replied. "Send everything we've got. Sensor logs, visual records, and a direct warning." Santos coded the message quickly. "WATHFIRE CO and environment. EXIST and IAL threat. Entropy intitui. Assembly stations consumed. Attach all logs. Recommend PR Toto CO Omega. Protocol Omega, the final defense plan that humans had developed in secret, hoping they would never need to implement it." "Message away," Santos reported, watching the system burn itself out with the effort of breaking through the jamming. On the bridge, Hayes activated the ship-wide comm. "All hands, abandon ship, get to the escape pods. Now." As the crew raced through the corridors, the darkness hunted them, seeping through bulkheads and consuming everything in its path. Hayes remained on the bridge, ensuring the reactor overload sequence couldn't be stopped. The darkness had nearly reached the command center when she finally turned to leave, only to find her escape route cut off. Trapped, Hayes faced the view screen one last time, watching as more gravitational anomalies formed around the ship. This wasn't a single entity, it was a swarm. A hungry ancient swarm awakening from dormancy. Computer, time to reactor overload. 47 seconds to critical mass. Hayes took a deep breath. Death was certain now, but she felt a strange calm. The warning had gone out. Earth would prepare. As the darkness breached the bridge, Flowing across the deck toward her, Captain Hayes stood tall. Her final thought before oblivion claimed her was not of fear, but of fierce pride. The humans would not go quietly into this endless night. The Deathworlders were coming. Across the vast gulf of space, a signal reached Earth, a desperate warning from beyond the grave. In underground facilities, hidden from assembly sensors, men and women in military uniforms stared at screens displaying the last transmission of the Pathfinder. Admiral William Reeves, Supreme Commander of Earth's hidden fleet, watched the footage in grim silence. When it ended, he turned to his staff. "Activate the Omega Protocol," he ordered. "Wake the fleet." Throughout the solar system, massive warships hidden in asteroid bases and beneath the surfaces of moons powered up their systems. Ships that no one in the assembly knew existed. The Deathworlders were going to war. The fury unleashed. Ambassador Marcus Chen stood in the private chambers of High Counselor Zix, his face betraying none of the grim satisfaction he felt as the alien diplomat reviewed the footage from the Pathfinder for the third time. "This is concerning," Zix admitted, their crystalline skin refracting light in patterns that suggested extreme distress. "But surely your single scout ship's encounter doesn't warrant such dramatic claims of galactic threat." Chen's neural implant pinged, the signal he'd been waiting for. "High Counselor, I'm not here to debate the threat assessment. I'm here as a courtesy to inform you that Earth has activated its defense protocols." Defense protocols. The High Counselor's translator struggled to convey their confusion. "Your species maintains a small peacekeeping force, as permitted under your assembly membership agreement." Chen's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We maintained exactly what was permitted in assembly space." A gentle chime sounded, and Chen gestured toward the large viewing portal that dominated one wall of the chamber. "You might want to watch this." The spatial distortion began as a slight shimmer against the backdrop of stars, then expanded into a massive tear in the fabric of spacetime. From the rift emerged a vessel that dwarfed anything in the assembly defense fleet, a behemoth of dark metal and glowing energy conduits, its hull bristling with weapon emplacements. Then another appeared, and another. "By the eternal light," whispered Zix. "What have you done?" "What you dismissed as paranoia," Chen replied coolly. "We call preparation. Earth has been building its true fleet since before we made first contact. This is just the first battle group." As they watched, more ships continued to emerge. Cruisers, destroyers, carriers launching swarms of fighter craft. Over 300 vessels in total, forming a protective lattice around the assembly capital world. "Your species violated the arms limitation treaties," Zix said, their voice trembling. "We adhered precisely to the letter of those treaties," Chen corrected. "They limited what humans could deploy in assembly space. These ships were built and stationed in our home system and other private locations. Now they're here because you ignored our warnings until it was almost too late." The High Counselor's communication device chimed urgently. Reports were flooding in from across assembly space. Human warships had appeared near every major world, establishing defensive perimeters without warning or permission. "This is an act of war," Zix said weakly. "No," Chen replied. "This is an act of survival. The fate of the Pathfinder confirms our worst fears. The entity isn't just destroying outposts, it's consuming them, growing stronger with each feeding. If it reaches heavily populated systems, the casualties will be beyond calculation." He stepped closer to the viewport, watching as his species' hidden might assembled in formation. "The assembly has two choices: stand with us against this threat, or stand aside." Admiral Helena Zhukov stood on the bridge of the EDF Thermopylae, the flagship of Earth's first fleet. At 57, she had spent her entire adult life preparing for a war she hoped would never come. Now, as she studied the holographic display showing the positions of all human forces throughout assembly space, she felt no triumph in being proven right, only grim determination. "Status report," she commanded. Fleet Commander Tarek Bishara responded crisply. All battle groups in position, Admiral. Assembly defense forces are maintaining distance but haven't taken hostile action. Their communications networks are in chaos. And our primary target. Long-range sensors have confirmed multiple gravitational anomalies moving through the Veil Nebula. Their pattern matches what the Pathfinder encountered, but on a much larger scale. Current projections show they're converging toward the Arcturus colony. Shukov nodded. Arcturus was an assembly agricultural world with a population of over 3 billion. Time to intercept. At maximum burn, we can reach Arcturus 12 hours before the anomalies. Then that's where we make our stand. Shukov turned to her communications officer. Open a channel to all Earth forces and to Assembly High Command. When the connection was established, Zhukov spoke clearly, her Russian accent more pronounced under stress. This is Admiral Helena Zhukov of the Earth Defense Force. We have identified an existential threat approaching the Arcturus system. All human forces are moving to intercept. We invite assembly vessels to join us, or to evacuate their people. She paused, then added, to the assembly leadership, the time for debate is over. The enemy we face consumes matter, energy, and life itself. We go to fight not just for humanity, but for all sentient beings in this galaxy. Zhukov out. As the transmission ended, an incoming communication alert flashed on her display. Admiral, her communications officer reported with surprise, we're receiving response signals from several non-human military vessels. They're offering to join us. Zhukov raised an eyebrow. Put them through. The holographic display shifted to show the face of a Karunan commander, his scaled skin rippling with determination. Admiral Zhukov, I am War Leader, Shoran of the Karunan Expeditionary Force. My people evolved on a world nearly as harsh as Earth. We understand preparation. We understand threat. 20 warships stand ready to join your formation. Before Zhukov could respond, more communications came in. From the Frexel, the Dur-Anthian Collective, and surprisingly, the normally pacifistic Melarai. All offering ships, all acknowledging that humanity's paranoia had been justified all along. In less than an hour, Zhukov found herself commanding not just Earth's fleet, but the first true multi-species battle group in assembly history, a coalition of the willing, species who, like humans, understood that survival sometimes required readiness for conflict. Plot intercept course to Arcturus, she ordered. Maximum burn. Let's meet this enemy on our terms. The void near Arcturus shimmered with distortion as the human-led fleet dropped out of FTL. The massive gas giant around which Arcturus colony orbited loomed in the distance, its rings catching the light of its sun. Surrounding the planet was the largest defensive formation assembled in the galaxy's recent history. Over 400 vessels of various designs and origins, united by a single purpose. On the bridge of the Thermopylae, Admiral Zhukov studied the tactical display with Commander Bishara and their newly integrated alien allies. Long-range sensors are detecting the anomalies, reported the Frexel science officer, her tentacles manipulating controls designed for human hands with surprising dexterity. Multiple signatures, approaching from the direction of the Veil Nebula. Show me, Zhukov ordered. The main view screen shifted to display what appeared to be ripples in space itself, darker than the void between stars. They moved with purpose, converging toward Arcturus. They're faster than we anticipated, War Leader Shoran observed grimly. And there are more of them. Deploy sensor drones, Zhukov commanded. I want real-time data on these things. As the data began streaming in, the science teams worked frantically to analyze the nature of their enemy. What they discovered sent chills through every species present. They're not solid objects, the human science officer explained. They exist partially in our dimension and partially elsewhere. They consume energy and matter, converting it to expand their presence in our reality. Weapons assessment. Zhukov asked. Conventional energy weapons appear ineffective, Bishara replied. Physical projectiles pass through them. They absorb the energy from our shields on contact. The first skirmish proved the analysis correct. As the vanguard of darkness reached their defensive line, 3 Duranthian frigates opened fire with energy cannons. The beams struck the entities but seemed to be absorbed, the darkness growing denser, larger, hungrier. "Cease fire," Shukov ordered across all channels. "Fall back to secondary positions." The retreat was orderly but tense. On the colony below, evacuation ships lifted off in a constant stream, carrying as many civilians as possible to safety. In the Thermopyla's Strategic Command Center, Shukov gathered her commanders, human and alien alike. "Conventional tactics are failing," she acknowledged. "We need a new approach." "Perhaps," said the Mellorai representative, her luminescent skin pulsing with thought patterns, "we have been thinking about this incorrectly. If these entities exist partially outside our dimension, perhaps we should attack them there." "How?" Bishara asked. "We can't access other dimensions." "We can't," agreed Shoran, "but we can manipulate the boundaries between them." A human scientist, Dr. Eliza Sharma, who had been quietly analyzing the sensor data, looked up. "The gravitational distortions, they're not just a side effect. They're how these entities maintain their connection between dimensions. If we could disrupt that connection." "With what?" Shukov asked. "We don't have weapons designed for this." A slow smile spread across Dr. Sharma's face. "But we do have the gas giant. And we have antimatter." Understanding dawned on Shukov's face. "You're suggesting we create a massive gravitational wave." "Precisely. A specifically modulated wave that will disrupt their dimensional anchoring." The plan was audacious and required precision timing. While the main fleet engaged the entities to hold their attention, a smaller strike team would position antimatter warheads at calculated points within the gas giant's atmosphere. When detonated simultaneously, they would create a gravitational disturbance powerful enough to sever the entity's connection to their home dimension. "It's a one-shot opportunity," Sharma warned, "and someone will need to manually calibrate the final detonation sequence. The radiation will block remote signals." "I'll lead the strike team," Bishara volunteered immediately. Zhukov nodded, knowing she was potentially sending her friend and officer to his death. "Choose your team. Anyone who goes understands this may be a one-way mission." As preparations for the desperate gambit proceeded, the darkness continued to consume. 2 more ships were lost, their crews and structures simply ceasing to exist where the entities touched them. The colony's evacuation was only 60% complete. "We need more time," Shoran growled. "Then we'll make time," Zhukov replied. She opened a fleet-wide channel. "All vessels, this is Admiral Zhukov. Form attack pattern Omega. We're going to give these bastards something to chase." The Allied fleet split into 3 battle groups, executing complex maneuvers designed to draw the entities away from both the colony and the gas giant where Bishara's team was now working. It was a dangerous game, getting close enough to attract the entity's attention without being consumed. Hours passed in tense combat. Ships were lost. Heroes were made. Species that had once regarded each other with suspicion now fought and died side by side. Finally, Bishara's voice came through on a heavily distorted channel. "Warheads in position, Admiral. Calibration complete. Detonation in 3 minutes. All ships, maximum thrust away from the gas giant," Zhukov ordered. "Get clear of the blast radius." As the fleet retreated, Bishara remained behind with his small team, making the final adjustments that could not be automated. On the Thermopyla's bridge, Zhukov watched the countdown with a leaden heart. "Detonation in 5, 4, the science officer's voice faltered. "The entities are converging on the gas giant. They sense the antimatter." "Bishara, get out of there," Zhukov ordered. Through the static came his calm reply. "Too late for that, Admiral. It's been an honor. For Earth." The view screen flared blindingly bright as multiple antimatter detonations rippled through the gas giant's atmosphere. The massive planet itself seemed to shudder, its rings wobbling as gravitational waves of unprecedented magnitude radiated outward. When visual sensors recovered, they showed a miracle. Where the darkness had been, there was now only empty space. The dimensional anchors severed, the entities had been cast back to whatever realm they had emerged from. But the gas giant was forever changed, its atmosphere roiling with new storm systems that would rage for centuries. And Bishara and his team were gone. In the days that followed, as the survivors regrouped and the final evacuation ships departed Arcturus, something unprecedented occurred in assembly politics. The species that had fought alongside humans called for a special session of the Council. Ambassador Chen found himself standing once again in the Great Hall, but this time not alone. Beside him stood representatives of every species that had joined the battle. High Counselor Six Fariel addressed the gathering, their voice subdued. "We convene this special session to acknowledge a debt that cannot be repaid. The Assembly officially recognizes that without the human fleet, without their preparation that we once called paranoia, countless billions would have perished." War leader Shoran stepped forward. "My people propose a new security protocol for the Assembly. We suggest it be named the Bishara Doctrine, after the commander who gave his life to save us all. Under this doctrine, the Assembly will maintain a united defensive force, with Deathworlder strategic principles at its core." The term Deathworlder, once whispered with mistrust, now carried new meaning, respect, even admiration. On the bridge of the Thermopylae, as it led the fleet back toward Earth, Admiral Zhukov gazed out at the stars. They had won this battle, but the void between stars was vast, and who knew what other ancient horrors might lurk in the darkness? Whatever came, humanity would be ready. And this time, they would not stand alone. The Deathworlders had awoken, and the galaxy was safer for it.